vibe.
What's up? Another episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Brands, also known as Ricky Brands, and a great episode for you today. Today we have a roundtable discussion. We have a couple returning guests, Jason Bermas, which you guys might know from his huge YouTube channel. He's also on Rockfin and many other video platforms. He's also a filmmaker, most notably Loose Change. He was a part of that 9/11 documentary. We have returning guest Louis Tulik, who is a retired detective and police officer. And last but not least, first time appearance on the podcast, attorney Jason McCarthy. And we're going to talk about all the mandates that are going on all around the country, what we can do, different ways to approach it, and much more. So I know you're going to enjoy this conversation because it's stuff that everybody's going through at the moment. Remember, this is a value for value show. So if you get some value out of these conversations, consider giving some value back. It doesn't have to be financial. If you can financially support the show, there's plenty of ways to do it. We have a Patreon page. We have PayPal if you want to donate. We have a Rockfin channel where you can tip the show. We also have a merch store, the Ripple Effect Podcast, merch.com. The hoodie that you saw me wearing during this episode, you can get on that website, Ripple Effect Podcast, merch.com. Or you can find all these ways of supporting the show on my new website, rickyvrans.com or the Ripple Effect Podcast.com. Both URLs will bring you there. And my website was launched at a crucial time because I'm dealing with a bunch of censorship on YouTube. I got 2 pending strikes. I'm not sure the YouTube channel is going to survive much longer. I've had a bunch of videos removed from YouTube by YouTube. So if you want to find all my shows, they're all going to be available on my website, rickyvrans.com or the rippleeffectpodcast.com. You can also find the Union of the Unwanted there and much, much more. So please check out the website. Support the show if you can. If you can't support the show financially, like I always tell you guys, share the show, review the show, tell people about the show. That goes a long way in helping spread the word and spreading these conversations. Hope all is well, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace. Let's get a little bit of your background, basically where you grew up, how you got to where you are, and then we'll get into some of, I guess, your perspective on what's been going on with the lockdowns and all that stuff, and then we'll go into specifically the video that I ran into that was being shared around that I found super fascinating.
Sure. Well, I grew up around here, grew up in Wilbraham. I went to Western New England College, and I went to Roger Williams University. Been practicing law for 11 years, and I'm basically a general practitioner. I do real estate, probate, civil litigation, stay away from criminal law, I stay away from divorce and bankruptcy. But other than that, I've handled pretty much everything a lawyer would typically do. This is all very new to me. This battling with the state over legislation and regulations and things like this. So is the whole political aspect of all of this. So over the past week, I've heard from all kinds of groups that I never knew were out there, and it's actually, it's a good thing. I like to hear from these people, and I'm glad these groups exist. But I'm just upset about my daughter having to wear a mask. That's basically what triggered all of this for me.
Yeah, we're on the same boat because honestly, local politics and stuff, I've kind of stayed out of it. I've been doing this podcast since 2013. And usually, Jason knows, a lot of us in alternative media community, we're talking about like international things, geopolitics, what's going on, with I guess household names, people we know. I don't know who my local school committee is. I don't know. Usually this stuff didn't affect me that much. So I kind of try to stay out of it. And now I was kind of the same way. Went to a local school committee meeting, was told last second about it, went there, didn't know how many people were going to show up that were for or against masks, but I didn't care. I'm like, I need to go. I need to give my 2 cents. And I was already a little worked up because that afternoon I'm hearing echo from somebody.
I'm getting it from your end there, Ricky, every time you're talking. I'm not sure if you're getting it. I didn't get it when Justin was talking, but to speak to that, I moved out to Iowa. Just, I picked this state in particular and this area because in the very beginning of last year when we moved, the kids were not in masks. Unfortunately, they did put the kids in masks in Iowa, and eventually by the end of the year, and they didn't have in-person class in the beginning, etc. But the out school programs at least didn't have masks and allowed my nieces some normalcy. And then at the end, it was struck down, and they're currently going to school without masks. About 1 in 4 or 5 kids in each of their classes are still wearing them because their parents are strict. But I can completely relate, man. And I'm glad to have people like you on our side because I believe that lawfare and us getting involved with peaceful noncompliance. I'm done playing pretend. Even where there is a mandate, I'm not down anymore. And one of those great things is that our sheriff here, Tim Lane, has said he will enforce none of this in Scott County. So even if you're in a private business and they start to say things to you, I just say, look, you let me do my business, or you can just call the police if you like, because they're not coming. And if that's what you want to make this into, I'd rather just do my business, because right now, the only place you're really seeing the masks is the corporate mandates. And that's how the federal government has really gotten around all this. It's through really extortion, right? They're going to give you all this money for programs and all these county money for programs, and you're going to get the PPE if you're a corporation, if you abide by these rules. And then you have, well, we're not federally enforcing it, but we want local mandates and we want corporate mandates. And then you see the people that work in Slave Mart having to wear the mask no matter what. In the local store, they don't have to do that. So, right now more than ever, I would say resist everything and say no to everything, no matter where you are. Ricky, you know how I stand on this. I think New York State, unfortunately, is doomed. It is literally the stomping grounds. They let a serial killer get away with a maybe grab ass report. He will never be charged with anything. And this woman who stepped in immediately told you they were going to mask your children up again. And just like now with their key to the slavery pass, the key to the city pass, they want that to expand to the states. And on top of all of that, you won't be fully vaccinated once the booster comes out, and all the regulations will start again. And they've already told you in the very beginning of this, and when I say they, people like the Fauchster and Bill Gates openly were telling you this was going to be 3 to 5 shots. So if you think their plans have changed, I would really have you take a hard look at what's gone on in the last 15 plus months here in this country, and then look at what Australia is going through right now, because that's the model.
Well, what I was going to get to, and it sounds like the echo is gone, but what I was going to get to was, so because of Louis, myself, and others who spoke out at the first Ludlow Committee school meeting, they pushed the motion. They were going to vote on it the following week. Well, it was the same day that the state basically decided for the whole, for our school committee meeting, or our school committee members and everybody else, that they're going to mandate it. So our school committee members basically decided that they don't have to vote for it. And, it basically took the responsibility out of their hands, which was kind of a cop out. But, and then, so I felt defeated for a little bit. And then somebody, luckily the nice thing about having a platform, and I'm sure you're the same way, Jason, you get sent tons of stuff all the time. So somebody sent me Justin's video talking to the East Long Meadows school committee. And they were one of the few towns locally that chose to make masks optional. And so I'm like, oh, they're screwed. And because I actually have a friend of mine who lives there, my buddy Marson, who sent me an article. He's like, hey, we chose to make it an option. Maybe there's some luck for your town. And And then obviously that went out the window. And then I see Justin's video. Basically, well, I'll let you explain the video, because it seemed like you were briefing them on like sticking to their guns, because technically they can't really enforce the mandate.
Well, I don't think that the Board of Education has the legal authority to give the commissioner the power to mandate the masks. So that was originally, I went to the board meeting because East Long Meadow did vote to make masks optional. So that was the week prior to the meeting, the video that you saw. And it's funny because they posted it on the agenda that they were going to vote on that, and absolutely nobody but me showed up. So no one showed up. They vote to make the masks optional. And then this group of people in town started a petition, which got great publicity on, Mass Live, 40, 22, and they got something like 700-800 signatures. So I started my own petition, I got almost 500 signatures right now. So that's what I was going there for. But this mandate was asked for by Commissioner Riley, and I just knew that the moment he asked for it, he's going to get it. So I do what any lawyer does. I look at the laws. I said, where's your authority to do this? And in my opinion, there is none. Okay. So the commissioner of schools here in Massachusetts basically gets his authority from the Board of Education. And the legislature has spelled out the authority that the board has in a very, very lengthy statute. So I read that statute, and there's nothing in there about making health policies, about doing anything like this. So that's really the crux of the legal argument against the mandate. You can challenge the actions of one of these departments if they go beyond the scope of other existing laws that are in place, like we have for vaccines and for contagious diseases, and if they go beyond the limits of the authority that the legislature has given to them, which I think they've done here.
Yeah. So, and what was that you sent me via email? Are you filing something, or what?
Okay. So like I said, I knew when Commissioner Riley asked for permission to do this, he was going to get the permission, he was going to do it. So I started preparing a complaint against both Commissioner Riley and against the Board of Education. So did I send you the complaint? Is that what I sent to you?
I believe so.
Okay. So I filed it on Thursday. I overnighted it to the court, and the court closed on Friday because they have mold all over the court. So the court's still closed today. Now, in between time, a lawyer in Agawam, Ryan McLean, he contacted me. He said, look, I have at least 1,000 at this point plaintiffs in preparation for a class action suit. So why don't you take your complaint, come join me, we'll file it together with all of these plaintiffs. It'll have far more weight than just you individually doing it. And he's absolutely right. So, so this was Sunday, spoke to him Monday about it. We set up this website to get as many plaintiffs as we could, and it's going to be filed very soon. And it's a very strong legal argument against the state here.
Justin, can I ask you, first of all, I think that's a great thing that you are joining forces, but what is the general attitude out there amongst people in your profession? You've got to have your finger on the pulse now, because I've seen a lot of people that are shying away from this because they don't think they can win, or they're just hoping it goes away. What are your feelings on that?
Well, unfortunately, I used to see dozens of lawyers every day, and we would talk about this stuff for hours, probably a day, but the courts have been closed. Most hearings have been virtual at this point. So it's really hard for me to get a sense of what other lawyers think, right? I personally, I've been reading, I've read the mask mandate cases, and I've read some of the other cases that have been along similar lines, and there's definitely a reluctance on the court's behalf, right, to make a hard ruling on any of this stuff. So they're throwing things out for lack of standing, for procedural reasons, and they're not really making substantive rulings here. All right. I don't think that's going to be the case in this matter. All right. And I don't want to bore you guys to death with the technicalities of this, but this is a straight legal challenge that I think a judge would look at the way he would look at any routine legal matter that he hears on a regular basis. All right. It's not like a grandiose constitutional argument. We're bringing in the Bill of Rights and all of this stuff. We're saying, Judge, look at this law. Look at what they're doing. What they're doing is not authorized by this law, which spells out their power. So we're asking for what's called a declaratory judgment, an injunction. We want it. We want both the mask mandate enjoined from happening. We don't want them to have the authority to do it. And they're using a regulation. So the administrative branch has all these departments, and these departments can write regulations. And they basically wrote their own regulation that allowed them to do this. So we want that invalidated as well, because in my opinion, it's not legitimate. It shouldn't be there.
Well, I agree with you on that. I want to go to an earlier point. You said most of these things that you've been doing over the last year plus have been virtual. Now, obviously, Ricky found you because of an in-person school board meeting. But as you know, a lot of those school board meetings, and on top of the school board meetings, county meetings, were all virtual as well. We even saw it on the national level where people were able to zoom in. To me, that's dangerous, because when these things are argued in person, they are much more impactful and you're less likely to be censored in real time. Do you think that this is going to be a tool they're going to be using? For instance, if we go into lockdowns in any way, shape, or form, or schools close, and once again, everything is virtual, parents won't be able to face these school board members in person again. And I think that's dangerous. What are your thoughts on that?
It's good and it's bad. Okay, so it has never ever been easier to complain directly to a board member of anything. Okay, I did go to the meeting virtually. All right, I also emailed before I went to the meeting. And you know, I plead with my friends, because all my friends have similar situations. They have kids. They want the masks off their kids. I said, guys, send an email or just virtually click on. You're in the meeting. It's like as easy as can be. So I actually think it's never been easier to
not in Ludlow. Not in Ludlow.
Not in Ludlow. Okay, well, it wasn't in East Long Meadow. It was, but you know, I don't know. It's one thing to be there. Okay, it's one thing to be there in person, but you got to get in your car. You got to drive there. You have to wait. You know, you have to sit on the bench until it's your time to be heard, and this and that. When it comes to the meeting, if it's virtual, I could be at my desk doing anything. I could work right up into the very second that they're ready to hear from me. Click, 3 minutes, say my piece, and then I'm back. You know, it's over. I'm back in my office doing my thing here.
But I think another flaw to that is like what you said previously in regards to kind of feeling out the other attorneys. When people gather, they also share ideas and they chat. And the thing is, even after our last committee meeting, everybody who spoke were like, oh crap, apparently we're all on the same team. Like, let's chat afterwards. And we're in a group and we're talking and we're sharing like possibilities on what to do and all these things. So I think not letting people gather and not letting people actually get together in person actually hurts us, because a lot of people feel like they're on an island. Like nobody feels the way we feel, you know? So when you're in person, you meet other people that are like-minded and have the same frustrations. And I think that can be helpful.
That is true.
Justin, can I add something? When we had our meeting in our town, they literally walked in, said the Pledge of Allegiance, and within probably a minute and 30 seconds had already said, rubber stamp, Desi, no discussion, on to item number 2. And then they talked for a half an hour about a superintendent search. And then, okay, we're going to adjourn the meeting. They didn't even offer an opportunity for public comment. And then we had to argue. People were really shouting at this board, hey, we need some time to speak. We still want to address the mask issue. And they had to like communicate whether they're going to allow it or not. And then it came down to, okay, we'll give you a half hour, 3 minutes each. That's it. And it has to be limited to the items on the agenda, which is not true according to the school committee rules. But however, we got up there, I had to spiel, I had 3 minutes to say what I had to say. I did that. They didn't want to hear anything. There was no option for debate with this committee. They shut you down, and it's absolutely, after a year and a half of not being able to speak in person to them, that's not something that should be happening. And I know East Long Meadow, it appears to be a bit more open as far as public comment, but I even wrote an opinion piece to our local newspaper today, and I ended it with, it seems like our school committee would rather choose to perform the business of debate on social media rather than in person. And they're on the, especially the chairman. This guy is all over social media. He's citing studies. He's debunking. And that's not the business of the school committee. Should not be carried out on a social media platform. And that's what's going on here. And my wife served on the school committee for many years, about 10 years ago. And she would just come home and be so frustrated because all you would be doing is rubber stamping mandates that were forced upon you by the state. And it hasn't changed. And to me, it was like, as soon as they found out that this mandate was coming down from DESE, they were like, oh, thank God, now we won't have to deal with any of these people. We'll just rubber stamp it and put it to bed. And they tried to do that, but it's not working. And we're not going to sit back and let them push this on us. So that's how it was here in Ludlow.
It's similar here in East Long Meadow, right? They just want to say, well, DESE has said this and DESE has said that, and they just want to go along with the guidance that comes out of Eastern Mass, that comes from, the Department of Education, because I guess it's just a safe way to do it, and that's the way. I deal with bureaucracy at every level. It's all I do all day long, and that's all they want to do, right? Every bureaucrat knows like his half a dozen statutes that he could cite to or whatever to just deflect anything from himself onto what somebody else's rules that have been pre-written for him, right? So the school committee is no different. I watch, there was a school committee election in my town recently, and I knew very little about the school committee, so they had to debate these two candidates. And the only thing the two candidates could do is just say, well, I would go along with the guidance set by DESE on this, and I would go along with that. I said, I can't vote for either of these people. Nobody has their own opinion. It's just sad.
Absolutely. And last time I was on Ricky's show, I tried to drive home, getting back to the masks, I tried to drive home the mental damage, the mental toll it's taking on these children. And I even spoke about my daughter who's anorexic, and any little trigger could set something like that off. So I really spoke about that last time. And then I started to think about how often in my career I had to wear an N95 mask, how often I had to wear a mask for whatever situation I had to wear it. But the protocols that needed to be followed and the guidelines that needed to be followed, and people don't even realize you can't just make a mask mandate and leave it at that and say, okay, kids, just wear masks. It doesn't work that way. And they're not even adhering to the minimal standards that are required with these masks. The minute you sneeze into them, the minute you cough into them, and then you've got kids, MIAAs, mandating masks for athletes. You're running around sweating. It's absolutely insane, the lack of logic. And I know the hierarchy of persuasion, at the bottom is logic and at the top is emotion. So when people say, well, it's for the greater good, it's for the best for mankind, save grandma, that appeals to people. Whereas logic at the bottom, really, it's almost like it bounces off their forehead and they're just not, maybe it's the lack of oxygen from the mask. I don't know, but I shake my head. And what I've started to do is go back to my roots of infectious disease training and the protocols that we had to follow throughout my career, and how somehow they just disappeared in the last year. You don't even need to bother. Let that kid wear the same mask 5 days in a row, no problem. It's insane. And that's what I said to the school committee at the end of my 3 minutes, which is totally ineffective to make a point. I told them that, you are not even abiding by the minimum standards by OSHA. You're telling teachers to mask up. For an N95 mask, you actually need to have a medical test done on your body to make sure you're physically fit and able to wear that. And OSHA, must be looking the other way and allowing, all these staff members to wear these masks day in and day out, not changing them, these little kids wearing them for 6-8 hours a day. And at the end of my spiel, I said, essentially that rises to the level in my eyes of child abuse. If you're forcing kids to wear these masks all day long, they're putting them in their pockets, they're sneezing into them, they're coughing into them, and you just look the other way like, oh yeah, that kid's got a yellow mask when it was white when he came in this morning. That to me rises to that level. And I know it's a stretch to do that, but it's not too much of a stretch.
I don't think it's a stretch at all, by the way. I mean, that's one of the ways that was the most effective to get the masks off of kids here. For those unfamiliar how it was done here in Iowa, I was actually at a meeting on a Sunday with two mothers who spoke from Ankeny, Iowa, whose children were forced to wear the mask. They were isolated. They were demonized. The one young girl, I believe it was 5 separate times, had contracted, what is staph infection. It was nuts. So they went to their school board meeting the next Monday. I had them on my show that evening. They were very disappointed. One was almost in tears. One was actually not allowed to speak, had to have her daughter speak. When they had the live stream, speaking of being in person, they made sure that the camera was away from the podium so you can only hear the women speak and the child speak instead of seeing them speak as well. And I mean, these women were pretty broken up on a Monday night after that. On Wednesday, with the help of one of our state senators here, Jeff Shipley, they were sitting next to the governor banning all mask mandates on children from that day on. And, it's one of those things where, again, like you said, Ricky, when you find other people and you organize, this meeting I was at with them was actually a bunch of groups, probably about 100 plus people had showed up there. The sheriff that I discussed had showed up there. He was asked questions and spoke as well. And all of a sudden, in a county, 2.5 hours away by Des Moines from mine, their impact made a statewide impact. And the next day, my nieces didn't have to wear masks. So
that resonates completely with me. But when I say it's a stretch and you disagree, I agree with you. Yeah, it rises to that level. It's a stretch because I don't think there's a court in Massachusetts that's going to entertain somebody bringing a complaint like that. I don't know if anybody's tried it yet, but
I just think you got to get the masses, man. And this is why the peaceful non-compliance, just like I said, the virtual, it's great that you can maybe go viral and challenge them virtually. But again, to show that strength that, hey, we're not leaving. We're not going to be 6 feet apart. We're over with the nonsense. It speaks volumes. And I think that again, was really part of it because these women did have a lot of backing at their county, and right now, for instance, they're nationally on tour every once in a while with Dr. Simone Gold and others that are talking about things that are banned on the YouTube platform where I plan to post this. So we're not going to talk about that. But the point being is there are a lot of people out there. And, unfortunately, we're in a very weird time. I understand people don't want to get up and leave. I'm a New Yorker, man. I did not want to get up and leave. But I saw what was happening all the way back in April 2020, and it wasn't going better. So I traveled the country. I went all the way to South Dakota. And, there are unfortunately varying degrees of this. And I want to see challenges in all states. And I wish Justin well and everybody like him. But the bottom line is I just think that we need more Justins. We need more people on the legal level to get out there and back the masses. And we need those masses to sign these petitions and be involved as well. I mean, everybody has to get involved at this point. Like you said, you can't just be on the sidelines on this one. These are our children.
Well, that's the thing that was really bothersome is that they keep talking about science and and statistics and all this stuff, and then they talk about the new variant. That's the other thing too. Like the timing couldn't be worse. Like now everybody's talking about cases going up, the new variant. I'm like, it's the same script, different year. Like they'll just keep. And then that was the thing that was super misleading that I was really upset about, was they kept selling it. Well, we'll just start the year with it. It's like, no. You guys are all drunk on power, and once we give you it, once we give you the authority to master kids, you're never going to give us that option back. And because there'll always be something else, some new propaganda story on the news that you can use as your justification. It's like, well, I hear cases are going up a little bit. Oh, I hear now you have to get the booster shot. Now, it's like, it's never ending. And that's why people have to put their foot down and finally have enough, because the truth is, most kids who are healthy are going to school. Most kids who are sick probably aren't going to school. So that means all the possibilities, all the negative possibilities of wearing a mask, like CO2, and talking about athletes. I mean, there's tons of videos online you can see of kids. Somebody got an email of kids passing out with a mask on. So, I mean, obviously nobody's gonna. How do you argue that breathing in your own CO2 is healthy? And then the mold, the bacteria, something that a teacher said to me that and again, this is common where a lot of people are just afraid to speak out. A teacher made a very good point, and this was like last school season, about how if something inappropriate happens, how is the child going to be able to identify who it was? Like, that's not going to be easy either. Like, God forbid the child has like second thoughts on like, I don't know who did that or what happened or whatever. There was at our last schools committee meeting, there was a bus driver. I don't know if you remember this, Louis, the bus driver, who's saying how the kids didn't recognize him without a mask, or he didn't recognize the kids without a mask. Like, so being able to identify somebody, that's something we're not taking consideration either. But my point is, like, you're basically, the majority of kids you're masking are healthy kids. So you're going to get all the negative effects of wearing a mask, CO2, mold, bacteria, not being able to identify people, not being able to see smiles and all those things that we need for social cues. And it's, for what? To stop the spread, possibly stop the spread of a virus that isn't affecting them and it's not a threat to them anyways. What really pisses me off is living in town of Ludlow. You don't have to wear a mask anywhere. We can go to butcher shops, grocery store, we can go to the gas station, go anywhere and not wear a mask. And the only place in town that's mandated is the place where the most least at risk people are, which drives me effing crazy. And it boggles my mind that people, and I truly believe that some of those parents that are speaking out for masks, they're traumatized. They're traumatized. It's 18 months of the media scaring you. And now even if everything around you is saying it's safe, like you can take off the mask, they're so traumatized that now you basically have people that might never take it off, that they might never feel safe. And so as strongly as we believe putting masks on healthy kids is ridiculous, they feel just as strongly about their position. And so in some sense, like, I almost feel bad for them. And I feel even worse for their kids, because kids sense stress, anxiety, depression. They sense when you're not yourself. They pick up on those things. As adults, we try to pretend like they're not listening to us, or they don't know when we're upset, or if I'm fighting with my significant other, they don't pick up on. They are. And that stress that the parents are sensing and getting because of the media propaganda, those kids are sensing, and they're equally as confused, and they're equally as afraid. So the long-term effects of this, I mean, we can't even scratch the surface in starting to understand what type of psychological negative effects we might be causing. And so and my point of this long rant is, what really drives me nuts is school committees and anybody who's for masks. They just talk about masks like, what's the big deal? Just put it on. Like, they completely disregard any possibility that there could be any negative effects. They're just like, it's just a mask, just do it. It's not a big deal. You could save somebody's life. It's like, no. You're completely ignoring all the other science, or lack of science, that this is doing anything. And you're ignoring all the possible negative effects of it. I mean, when they removed the mask mandate in America, or in Massachusetts, my kids were so happy. They were like, so, and I mean, almost over and I don't even make them wear masks when we would go to grocery store and stuff. If anything, I'd have them put it on their chin or whatever, just so nobody harasses us. And even they were like super excited. So it's like, it was affecting them. And I'm a parent that tried to give them the most normal environment as I could in the last 18 months. I could just imagine, what those kids are feeling. And when parents are like, oh, my kids wear masks, they don't care, and I'm like, what is that? How does that even how is that an argument? How does that make a point? Like, your kids, yeah, they don't care, but they also, like, as parents, we're supposed to protect them from things that they're not aware is harming them. So it's like, they might not care, but that doesn't mean that there's not some harmful effects to it.
Ricky, they don't care. All that stuff you just said, they don't care. The only thing that matters, I think, as far as is what Justin's doing here. They need to hear something official. They need to be served. They need to be civilly served a lawsuit. And I think that's going to speak for them.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think anybody is going to persuade anybody else at this point. I haven't been on Facebook in probably 2 years. But because I'm trying to get support for what I'm doing, I've gone back on, I've put a few posts up, and I just get comment after comment with people showing me their studies and their facts. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to read your article and have my mind changed and put, 3 masks on my kids because of whatever you show me. It's beyond that. Okay, so we have to win at court. We have to start taking back these low-level political offices, and it's the last thing I know that most conservative, libertarian-minded people want to do, is work all day and then go do 3 hours of campaigning or speaking at spaghetti dinners or whatever it is. But that's what we have to do, or we're going to lose on this. So yeah, the time for argument, it's gone. I mean, nobody's being persuaded of anything anymore. You just have to beat them, like I said, judicially, politically, however it's going to be. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it's got to go, I think.
But Justin, do you think that there's any point in even trying to go the criminal route as an individual taking out a complaint, or is that just something that's?
I don't think so. No, you'd have to do what's called a show cause hearing, and you'd go before the magistrate, and he would almost certainly throw it out. So the judges and the magistrates and the people in the executive branch, all these people are cut from the same cloth. Mm-hmm. Here in Massachusetts, at least.
Yes.
So it's really, really difficult to persuade them of anything. You need to almost use the law to force them to do what you want done. And the law has to be strongly in your favor, and you need to make a solid argument and get it done right and follow the 17 procedural hurdles that they put in front of you to stop you from succeeding. You need to do all of it absolutely right, and then force them to do their job. And I think that's the only way to get anything done at this point.
And I think what's truly sad is these agencies like OSHA, who are supposed to oversee the use of these masks, even the CDC themselves, the FDA, like this piece of garbage right here, which is pretty much on every street corner now, is not considered respiratory protection. It's written right on the box. It's written right on the CDC. And what is COVID? It is a respiratory disease that can go right through this, because it's 0.1 microns is the size of a COVID particle. This thing is useless because there's openings on the side, and you're having kids with those 4-6 hours a day. OSHA standards, if you read them for employers, which a school system is, you're employing teachers and you're forcing them to wear masks. There are guidelines you need to follow. So to me, it would be very easy to present a case. Obviously, I mean, it makes sense on the outside, but when you try to present this case, the way our courts are, I know how they lean, I know the way it is up here, it's never going to happen. But it's a sad state when I can absolutely prove to you through science that these are ineffective measures, and they're actually more damaging than anything. And there's a guy, his name is Stephen Petty. He does these podcasts, and he's what's called an industrial hygienist. He's been hired by schools to do things like assess the air systems and assess the benefits of PPE. At the bottom of the pyramid of infection controls, PPEs and masks don't even make it. It's all about proper air ventilation and moving air through the rooms. And in our schools, what do? They removed all the fans and they thought shutting the windows was a good idea. So there's no logic behind any of this stuff. And I think somebody that could properly present a case and show how many OSHA standards and FDA and CDC guidelines they are failing to adhere to me, the recklessness is beyond the need of proof and way beyond a shadow of a doubt. So if there's any reasonable doubt, it's certainly not on their side. It's definitely, to me, a provable case. Of course, I was a detective for a long time, and I know the hoops you have to jump through. Even when you have all the evidence in the world, you still gotta, you still may not win the case. So yeah. I totally understand the situation we're dealing with, but it's unfortunate.
No, we gotta dig for stuff like that, like the OSHA laws. I'm not familiar with the OSHA laws, but that would certainly be something, wherever you bring an OSHA violation case, bring it in the appropriate court and just see. I mean, there just has to be challenge after challenge to all of this. And just,
sure.
when I spoke in East Longmeadow, there were 3 women who spoke before me in favor. There were 5 people total who spoke before me, but 3 people spoke in favor of masking the children. And 2 of the 3 cried hysterically while giving their 3-minute speech, because it's emotional. It's not about science and reason and anything. These people they've been watching these COVID montages on NBC and the nightly news and everything else, and they're just whipped up into a frenzy. And nothing you say to them about how effective these masks are or the damage they're doing to our kids physically, emotionally, it doesn't matter to them, because they're just charged on fear and their own emotion. And it's just, we're just talking past each other at this point, I think.
At what point do we take our kids out of the schools? I mean, is that something that you've actually thought about at this point? Because
I did it Monday. I pulled my senior 3-sport athlete going into her senior year, said, I don't want to do this anymore. And we put our letter of intent in Monday. We put an educational plan in, and we pulled her out. And I recommend every single person out there, if you have the means to do it, get your kid out of these schools. It can be done. It doesn't need to be done on a Monday through Friday basis. You can do it on the weekends. You just need to find the time to get it done. And if it's your child and you care about your child and you really want a good future for them, get them out of these schools, because they're not doing anything to help these kids. And I'll tell you one thing, my daughter went depressed on Sunday night thinking she was going to school. We got together with a bunch of homeschooling people, and I was like, wait a minute, we can do this. And on Monday morning, I brought my letter right to the school department in hand, and she has not been happier. So, I mean, that's a sad thing to have to say, well, I have to pull her out of school to make her happy, but that's the way it is. And I know a lot of people, and I know what I was told about the school department, there's over 100 people in Ludlow that pull their kids out of school. That's a big hit to them. They don't like that. And I would recommend that if you want to fight back and you can do it, get your family together. And if you have the means to do it, do it. It's a great move.
Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. My wife and I have had those conversations, and if this does not let up, and I don't think it's going to, and there are 2 bills right now to change the vaccine laws in school. At a certain point, enough will be enough. So my daughter, she's 7 years old. She takes piano classes, and she, up until recently, was taking French lessons from a girl, a college student in France. And she could play the piano and speak French as well as she can read and do the mathematics that she's learning in person at school, right? The piano and the language lessons are done virtually. So my point is, I could just hire somebody to teach her math and reading and not have to worry about any of this stuff if it comes to that, right? And if that's the worst case scenario for us, then that's not too bad.
And to speak to parents who are hesitant about it or afraid, I'm like, I'm not a teacher. I don't know what I'm really doing here. There are more resources than ever online than have ever existed before. And more people are doing it. I mean, there's people in your own community, I'm sure you can find them, that have raised 2-3 kids. And many of them do much better and score much better and fare much better when they go off to college or into a career. It's been proven that homeschooling is an absolutely effective way to educate your children. So, you know, like I said, I was a little nervous about it, but we're doing AP Physics this week. We're doing British Lit. I mean, so it works. If you have the weight, if you can pull it off, it's absolutely worth trying.
And like you said, find other parents to gather with and get together with. And my kids were homeschooled for the same reason, the mask things, so we pulled them out, and that's exactly what we did. We kind of started a little community, and every week we would go to one of the mothers' houses, and all the kids would gather there, and they would still be able to be around other kids their age and communicate and hang out and teach them things. And we do little field trips. It's actually, you know, it's pretty fun. I mean, one of the arguments was always like, oh, well, the social skills, you know, and it's like, well, now it's like, well, if you can't touch your friend, if you can't see their face, you're not learning a whole lot of social skills. You know, it's like that argument's kind of out the window. And, you know, the other problem, and even besides the mask thing, I mean, the other issue too is like, you know, school used to be a place where you learn to think, and now you go to school that they teach you what to think. And, you know, that's a problem too. Like, we're not, you know, these teachers, and it's even worse in universities, but people are pushing their political views on the kids, their ideologies on the kids. And there's, you know, it's so easy to influence a child who's still trying to figure out the world. You can kind of steer them in any direction you want. And then it's, you know, then to them, like, yeah, this makes sense. This is what I was taught. This is what I was told. So that's also something people have to be a little wary about, because we're, you know, these conversations, just outside of masks, there's plenty of other conversations that, you know, we could get into, maybe on another podcast, but you know, that it's like, hey, you know, like, don't push. I'm all for, you know, giving kids as many ideas and ideologies to explore, and let them decide for themselves. Let them filter out what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Even with my own kids, I have a 6-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. I'm always a little worried about them just adopting whatever I'm saying just because I'm the one saying it, and not because it makes sense to them. So I'll break it down with them. If I hear them repeating something I said, I'll break it down with them. Like, okay, I'm like, but why do you agree with me? You know, and I'll break down like, okay, you know, let's get into what I said, you know, why you might think it makes sense or doesn't make sense, just because I don't ever want them to just adopt my perspectives. You know, maybe my sports teams, I'm more than happy them adopting, you know, that's okay. But, you know, in regards to ideologies or ideas, and that's something that is concerning too. I mean, I had somebody on a couple of years ago, what was her name? Carrie McDonald, I believe. She wrote the book Unschooled. And at the time, it, like, you know, it wasn't a podcast that got a whole lot of attention. And then I like re-released it or started sharing it on social media during the lockdown. Everybody was intrigued with like, what's unschooling and what's this, you know? And so that's a legit concern, like just not knowing what the teachers are saying, what they're teaching, and what ideas they're force feeding our children. When they're home, at least you kind of have a better idea of what they're learning. And the thing about learning too, it's very deceiving. People think like, you know, obviously we can get into Common Core and all these things. Like, learning isn't just regurgitating facts and information and names and dates. They're probably going to learn much more when it's a parent or somebody you know personally, or a group of parents, and you're exploring ideas and you're learning critical thinking skills. And I mean, that's learning, you know, or even just pursuing a art, you know, like playing the piano, music, painting, you know, whatever it may be. Like, the long-term benefits of that, it's much better than somebody who on paper looks really intelligent because they're good at memorizing information, and then, you know, passing a test based on that information. You know, it doesn't mean that that information is important or it's going to help with their mental development or, you know, or it is going to mold a interesting person. And I think that's all we want to do is, you know, help our kids expand the way they look at the world and not just be a robot that's regurgitating things.
I want to ask Justin a specific question regarding bullying. We all know the schools are all about bullying. There's a zero tolerance for bullying within the schools. And I think it wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, in my opinion, when they're forcing masks on kids, and some of the things that are said to these kids in the hallways by teachers, including my own daughter last year, who was reprimanded by a teacher because she was running outside after school without a mask and said, you should know better. Not taking into consideration that my daughter also has what's called exercise-induced bronchial spasms. She has a medical release. So when these kids walk down the hall, and I feel bad for kids with medical exceptions to masks, because you can guarantee that everybody that watches them walk down the hall, it's almost like that scarlet letter. Oh, look at that kid why he's not wearing a mask. Teachers will come up and say, why are you not wearing a mask? But they have to pull out this excuse every time. So there are certain instances, and I think this reaches the level of coercion, and bullying, by definition, coercion is bullying. So you can file formal complaints. You can do that with the Department of Education. You can make their lives difficult. I suggest every parent who feels their child's being coerced into wearing this stupid face diaper, file these complaints. These agencies are there. The DOJ is there. I mean, it sounds crazy, but what are they doing to us is insane. It is crazy. And if we have to take measures like that to fight back, then why don't we? These agencies are there for that reason. And this was not something I thought of. This was something that was brought to my attention a few days ago. But these resources are there. And if they're real serious about bullying, let's just put it right back at them. So, I mean, that's just another angle that may be an option. I don't know. But, you know, I think anything at this point may work. But I don't know if Justin has an opinion on that.
I'm not too familiar with the bullying laws or with how they're handled administratively. But if there's a way to file a complaint, I would be in favor of it. If you have a legitimate complaint, that's what it's there for.
And also, they're mandated to investigate.
Right. Also, there are, I mean, there is a mountain of regulation from the federal level onto the state systems when it comes to federal funding for education. So if you really wanted to get into the weeds on it, you could look into all that, because it's almost impossible to not make some sort of mistake when creating any sort of regulation or doing any sort of policy whatsoever. There are, however, I do have to say, there are an absolute army of bureaucrats, and for any little thing that a government agency does, they have a slew of people who know just what to do and just how to write things and put things in order so that it's extremely hard to challenge. It doesn't mean it can't be done, and it can be done successfully. It just, if you're going to do it, it's going to take a whole lot of time. I have spent dozens of hours just looking at this one little mask mandate. And, you know, I'm a solo practitioner. That's a big hit to me financially. I've got clients angry at me because I'm doing this and not giving them, you know, my attention on other things. So it's hard to do, but each of us has to sort of, I guess, pick a hill, and that's our fight, and we're going to have it. So if that were going to be yours, you know, give it your all.
I'm just throwing everything against the wall and seeing what sticks. And
right.
To kind of speak to the coercion aspect and how it's not really a health issue, I was like furious when I found out at my niece's school, they were actually awarding kids mask-free time for good behavior. Now, if you think about how absurd that is, because it's such a health issue, that if you behaved in a certain manner, you would get 10 or 15 minutes where you could get 6 to 10 feet away and be able to take your mask off as some kind of a reward. Well, I don't care if my kid's rotten as shit. If this is a health issue, they should have the same time breathing fresh air as everybody else. And again, that is just another thing that blows my mind, that they can get away with that in a school and education system. And yet it's been done. And that's just a microcosm for everything.
If this were as deadly as we're told it is, who would you have to tell to put a mask on? Why would you need a mandate? Everybody would put their mask on and stay away from, but people know in their hearts, right, and from firsthand experience, that it's pretty safe, okay, to not have a mask on and to be near somebody else or be in a small group of people or even a large group of people. So that's why we need the coercion, because it is irrational and people know it. So you need force in order to implement it.
It's what's funny is when we had the school committee meeting, the chairman of this committee is wearing an N95 mask. Now, sometimes the meetings can go on for an hour and a half, 2 hours, but he'll wear the mask throughout the whole meeting. And when I went up and spoke, I said, he's a dentist. I said, as a dentist, you probably change that mask 20 to 30 times a day, correct? Well, I assume, I said, a dentist is supposed to change their mask after every patient. And that's a CDC policy. That's their mandate. So you meet with one patient, probably maybe 8 or 10 in a day, maybe 12, I don't know. And you change your mask that frequently, but you expect these children to come into this school. Maybe they come in with their little, Disney or Star Wars face mask. They wear it all week long, and no one's saying anything. I guess it's up to the parent. But if that kid sneezes into that Star Wars mask, and I guess they don't sneeze or cough all day when they're in school, but if they do one sneeze or one cough into that fabric mask, and you think about that all day long, there's not a single person there. The nurse isn't there to monitor that. No one's there to monitor that. You're talking about first and second graders touching their masks. I mean, and that's where I get to that point of reckless endangerment of children, is no one's overseeing this. They're just put this mask on, keep it on your face all day long, put it on the table, put it in your pocket when you go to the restroom. And what does like a high schooler do? A lot of those kids never change their masks. A lot of them, teachers are telling me like they're wearing the same mask all week long. Where does that mask go when they leave to go home? They jump in their car, and where does it go? It becomes a freaking rear view mirror ornament, and it hangs on the rear view mirror. Like so many people driving by, and what do? Their buddies jump in the car, they turn the air conditioning on, and guess what? That mask and all the crap that's on it is going through the entire car. Like nobody thinks. It's just, and there is a science to the mask issue that's totally being ignored. And it's basically put a mask on. And I even asked the school, do you have a disposal policy? What is it? Just throw it in the trash in the classroom when you're done with class? Do you throw it in the bathroom? Like there's a way of disposing of these things the right way. I don't think that's happening. Is there anyone monitoring when some kid not feeling good, when they get hypoxia because the mask is causing a lack of oxygen? There's so many kids coming home tired and fatigued. No one's monitoring that. They don't really care. So that's what I was getting at with the school committee, is like, you guys are you're going to just rubber stamp DESE, who's not a health organization, who has no authority whatsoever to do this. And I totally agree with Justin's take on that. It's absolutely absurd. And I think if we can't do it in the courts, and we can't do it, by talking to our school committees, then I guess we got to do it individually. And again, take your kid out of school. Tell your kid, have your kid go to school without a mask if you want to try that. Get a medical excuse. Tell the kid, there is a law that if somebody's having difficulty breathing and they just can't wear that mask for the rest of the day, they're entitled to take that mask off. They can't be forced to. Can you imagine? Like, kid's got a headache, he's not feeling good, the mask is bothering him. The CDC even says it right in the guidelines. If the mask becomes impossible for you to handle and you can't take it any longer, you have the right to remove it. But nobody cares, and that's just a sad state we're in. But individuals can step up, and we have power. And people have told me, oh, Louis, why are you even bothering with this fight? You're never going to win. You're fighting a mammoth institution of forced thinking and all this other stuff. And I don't believe that. I believe we can overcome this, and we can keep fighting, and something good's going to come of it down the road. I really do believe that.
I talked to a friend of mine, Brian Festa. He's a Connecticut attorney. He runs CT Freedom Alliance and We the Patriots USA. And he was talking about how, like, basically, because I know that like the vaccine mandates is the other thing. He's like, first of all, he's like, people, don't quit your job. Like, make sure that they fire you. Like, don't quit your job, because you're screwing yourself. Obviously, you won't be able to get unemployment because you're basically refusing work, all this other stuff. If they fire you because of it, then you have a case. But he's having the same battles down there, and they got rid of the religious exemptions a while ago, which is a huge issue, because my kids have never been vaccinated, and I'm not against or for it. Well, I mean, my personal opinion, people know what that is. But what I'm saying is, I'm not against anybody else doing it or not doing it. I think parents should decide what the risk is and what the reward is. And that should be decided between the parents, the children, and a pediatrician that you might trust, who hasn't been brainwashed to jab every single kid they see. But the thing is, like, so it's even worse in Connecticut now. But the thing is, like, what you mentioned about losing, we're not in a state of emergency. Shouldn't they lose some authority because of that? Like, how can they keep mandating things and keep pushing things and keep, like, if we're out of a state, I mean, that was what gave them all this authority to completely just do things that they shouldn't be able to do. Like, how are we not in a state of emergency, and yet, like, they're still flexing their muscles like we are?
So if you go to Charlie Baker's website, the governor's website, there'll be a picture of him signing rescinding the state of emergency. And then if you read through it, he's rescinded the state of emergency and then signed in a modified state of emergency. So we're like in this quasi state of emergency. That doesn't apply to the mask mandate, okay? The agencies in Massachusetts can write these regulations. It's called the CMR, the Code of Mass Regulations, all right? And each agency can write regulations within the bounds of whatever statute gives them their authority. Well, they just wrote this regulation. They took one sentence out of the statute, okay, dealing with the structural environment of school buildings, says that they have to have a safe environment, talking about the buildings. And they said, oh, well, that also means the health of students as well, which it doesn't. And then they wrote in, okay, well, we have the authority to make these health guidelines, and then they use that to vote on this mandate. So they just bent the law to the point of breaking it, in my opinion. And I think any honest person who reads the same statutory law and the regulations and what they did would agree with me. So, but as to what Jason was saying, we all just have to start flouting this stuff. I mean, I went to a christening this weekend. There's a big sign up on the church, all right? You must have a mask to enter. No one put a mask on. There's probably 3 people who went in out of 30 wearing a mask. And within 5 minutes, they took their masks off. They go, okay, this is the attitude here. In town here, there's in East Long Meadow, the health department just signed in an order that businesses need to have masks. I just went into a local business and nobody had a mask on. I didn't wear my mask in. It's just what needs to happen. All right, people need to start flouting these laws to the point where they're just unenforceable. And then I don't know, they're never going to stop pushing this on us, but I think the way to defeat it ultimately is through the legal process, through the political process, and just through people ignoring all these petty dictators who are coming up with these regulations.
Justin, can I ask you what you think will happen if, in fact, the key to the city pass in New York goes statewide due to possible lockdowns, emergencies, higher death tolls, whatever, in the coming months as we have flu season? And as we've seen before, the East Coast, in many respects, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, New Jersey, kind of becomes beholden to these policies. Do you share these fears? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I do. Yeah. There's legislation, right? Or not legislation, but there's a bill right now in Massachusetts that's trying to do the same thing. The entry law, or I forget what what title they gave to it, but yeah, they want everybody showing a vaccine card before they enter a business, and all the big corporations will follow it, and all the little businesses, I would imagine, won't. I mean, they won't do it as rigidly, at least. It's totally uncharted waters. Okay, I don't know if there's been anything similar to that. All right, where you have to actually show your a medical card to enter into an establishment. I don't know, and you know what? I think there's some politicians and there's some judges who will go along with anything, and there's some who won't. And I think it would almost need to get up to the Supreme Court. It almost certainly would, but it would have to make it that far if New York did it, as well as Massachusetts, I would think. And then who knows? The Supreme Court has not been very reassuring on their opinion.
Certainly is not.
Over the last year, yeah. So who knows? But I think what's going to ultimately happen, it's going to be like the homeschooling thing, where we have like these little parallel society where people just say, hey, you know what? I'll just raise my kid. I'll educate my kid myself. And wait, there's dozens of people who agree with me. Let's all get together and hire a teacher or something. I think there's going to be businesses like that you won't be able to go into like the big chain restaurants, but the little family restaurant, I would think you'd be able to get away with it. I mean, how many health inspectors are there in
Well, I think that the problem is that they've now indoctrinated us into believing contact tracers have any kind of legitimacy. And unfortunately, the power that they've given to them is, one, they're a doctor, right? They get to diagnose you right there. So now they're the medical professional. Two, they're law enforcement. They get to decide. And then three, they're the judge on what you're going to have to do, and they're contacting you. And these are people that have no skill in any of those things, but through a bureaucracy are given power. And then comes in the next level of bureaucracy, either your local health department, the local police department. And just like you saw, say, with Mac's Tavern in New York City, as an example, when the local police department refused to do it, what do? They got the sheriff's department that was writing tickets to go do it. So they're always going to find, another rat, in my opinion, unfortunately, or somebody who's desperate for work and is bought into this system. And that's what they're getting us ready for. Joe Biden's not in charge of much, and he doesn't write his own stuff. But prior to him, being put into office, he said, we're going to have 100,000 contact tracers for this and other diseases. And now that's starting to go full force. So that's my great fear. I do hope we see pushback. I haven't seen a lot of pushback on the key to the city pass, and people like de Blasio, who after the exit, I'm sure will get some kind of czar position in the administration. But it is very heartening to see people like yourself. And again, I'm hoping that you can reach out to your other in law and really fix these situations, because otherwise, I really believe we are in big trouble.
I have a buddy of mine who got COVID some months ago, and he's still getting calls from the state to check up on him, ask him if he quarantined, ask him if he's been tested. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, they call me once a day. I'm like, how crazy is that? And his wife works at the hospital, the local one, Bay State. And, and I've talked to many people. That's the thing, like this illusion of like, we're in a crisis. Like Justin said, like, if you just look around, like I go to the gym every morning, people are touching things, people are working, everything's fine. I talk to people who work at hospitals. One of my very good friends, Riyadh, works in an emergency room. He's actually a traveling nurse. He's all over the state. And I asked him, I just played soccer with him Sunday, and I'm like, Riyadh, like what's going on all over the state? Like, is COVID really, like, are you seeing Delta variant? Are you like, are the cases going up? He's like, yeah. He's like, they're in some hospitals, he's like, we're above average in how busy they are, but he's like, they're not COVID cases. He's like, and we're not anywhere near, what the TV's telling you, we're not in like a state of emergency. So that's the thing that's scary, is the TV can kind of paint any picture they want. And even if your surroundings, even if what the reality of things tells you otherwise, you're just believing the TV. It's like that old quote, if you don't watch the news, you're uninformed. If you do watch news, you're misinformed. And that's exactly what's going on. People who have the best grasp on this are people who are turning off the TV and thinking for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I mean, the doctors who advise these committees, they just scare the hell out of the committees, or I mean, they just make things sound so catastrophic that the committees look bad, not doing exactly what the doctors say. Now, I mean, speaking as a lawyer, I see lawyers do this to clients all the time, okay? If you don't listen to me, the lawyer, then the result's going to be catastrophic financially, legally, all right? And they do it in order to both make their advice look more valuable and to get the person who's listening to them to do exactly what they tell them to do, all right? So I do think that there's a little bit of that coming out of the medical community, all right? But I mean, you go to these meetings and they don't begin with a moment of silence for the member, who's not there that night because he's on a respirator, because they're all there, all right? Because it's so tough to look around and just see people who will not judge things on their firsthand experience and how they, what's going on firsthand in the world. I'm sure there are people out there suffering, but my kids have been social all summer long. Like you said, I go to the gym, right? It's probably the dirtiest place, it's just, I go to Best Fitness, right? Where, they try to clean things, but you go to restaurants, no masks, you go everywhere. My whole family's fine. Everybody I know is fine. And the people who did get COVID, they're okay after a few days, all right? It knocked them out for a few days, but they're still alive and they're okay. So I don't know.
That's funny. I also go to Best Fitness. What time do you usually go?
I go in the evening. It's mob, so usually around 6 o'clock.
Yeah, I go.
But the people in there are not they try to clean the equipment, but come on, how good could you do?
Ricky, to speak to the media perception of this, versus reality. You just saw me on Monday with the Genesis hospital personnel that don't want this vaccine mandate. And there were about 300 people there, mostly nurses and physicians that worked for Genesis and their families, none of which in the 95-degree weather over 2 hours were wearing masks. There were 3 people from the mainstream media that were there, 2 of which were in masks. And obviously I went live and, shamed this person because they're definitely vaccinated, they're wearing the mask outside. They're giving this, perception of authority. And yet again, I'm standing against medical personnel and their families by the dozens, several hundred of them. And there's not one mask. Now, who am I supposed to believe? The people that work in the hospitals, that are amongst all the very, very sick people that are there with their small children, or the lunatic in the mask with a camera whose piece is going to run later in the afternoon? Well, again, I have eyes and ears and I can think for myself and I can see that hypocrisy. I do want to say, if people do see this, I'm going to be at Trinity in Bettendorf, Iowa, this Thursday. That's tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m. with those people. And I'm going to be putting the media on blast there. They were literally the only ones wearing the masks, people. So again, this is why I think it's important that we have to get together and show people that. I know I'm a small voice in all this, and that video only gets several hundred hits. But as you know, it's all about reach. As soon as that thing gets several 100,000 hits, it's over. They just censor you. And that's another thing that's concerning about this. What are your feelings on the massive censorship that we've seen, Justin, over the last 15 to 18 months, especially regarding issues like masks and vaccines?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I mean, and I have to say, both sides sort of caricature one another. All right, so it's kind of hard if you listen exclusively to like the liberal talking heads or the conservative talking heads. I think everybody needs to sort of break away from all the hyperbole and sort of just look around and base your opinions on things on what's happening firsthand and right in front of your eyes. I think both sides are guilty of it. I do think the censorship comes especially from one side, but both sides filter their information for sure. And I just think now more than ever, we got to tune out and just, trust our senses and what we see firsthand.
Yeah, this video won't be on YouTube anytime soon because I just got another strike, so I can't upload for a while. But when one door closes, another one opens. The nice thing is, Jason and I, because of the censorship, are on Rockfin, a great alternative to YouTube. Back in the day, you could go on YouTube, you could find Jason's documentaries and loose change and blow your mind. And next thing you know, you're down these rabbit holes. Now you go on YouTube and you're force-fed mainstream media, which is exactly why you're there, is to not get mainstream media. Because if I wanted to watch mainstream media, I would turn on TV. I wouldn't be searching on Google or YouTube. So the positive part of it is but I'm getting in trouble for medical misinformation. I think Del Bigtree is the only one who's interviewed more doctors than me in the last 18 months. I've had so many doctors on. It boggles my mind how they can keep just like ripping off stuff for misinformation, medical misinformation. Never mind the fact that not all doctors agree. I mean, most of us work out. Most of us, have probably had injuries in the past. It's common that you go to one doctor, he diagnoses you with one thing, and then you go to another doctor and he has a second opinion, and you get a third opinion, and they don't all agree. So, I mean, the fact that regardless, like Justin said, regardless of what side you're on, nobody should be deciding what truth is for you. Nobody should say that we're deciding what is dangerous information and what isn't. And we should be able to have access to all information, and you fight bad ideas with good ideas. You filter out the stuff that doesn't make sense. Let people decide. And unfortunately, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everybody has a agenda, and they all seem to be on the same team. And that's what's, at least growing up, I felt like, okay, you had liberal media, you had conservative media. It kind of balances itself out a little bit. The conservatives will expose the corrupt liberals. The liberals will expose the corrupt conservatives. So it like filters out the bad guys. Now it's like everybody's on the same team. It's big pharma, and basically everybody's. I mean, News 22 locally, I've never seen so much medical misinformation than their Facebook feed. I mean, when the vaccine first came out, they said conspiracy theories are already circulating about deaths linked to the vaccine. They're saying that the vaccine was going to stop the spread, and it was, and now Jason said, it's never ending. That's the thing people don't understand. There is no finish line until we put our foot down and said we've had enough. Because before it was like, let me just get the vaccine so we can get back to normal. And I would tell people, I'm like, well, how many vaccines do you think you're going to have to take? Because once it's, just like the flu, and the flu is the easiest thing for people to kind of relate it to. You have to get a new flu vaccine every year because the virus changes. It's the same thing with this. If you decide that to mandate the COVID vaccine for anything, for schools, for whatever, it's never going to end. Like, you're going to have to get the booster shot every 6 months. There's going to be a new variant. And they're just going to force feed us this thing. They're going to track us. I mean, you talked about you've never seen anything like this in regards to showing your papers. Nazi Germany says there has been things like this before with showing your papers. I mean, it's scary. And I think that there's a lot of people who just don't believe tyranny and absolute evil exists. But if you study history, there's always been people and people who want to control those people and want to conquer those people. Like, this isn't new, but we like to think that like we live in some time where now like the media and government and big pharma are the good guys. It's like, when did they become the good guys? I mean, look at historically big pharma. I mean, you talked about it, Lou, last time you were on. I mean, look at the painkiller epidemic. Just that big pharma knew what they were doing, and they here.
Then why are people once again relying on these people? Oh, The CDC is looking out for me. The FDA is looking out for me. Now, Janet Cockburn, who just is the head of the FDA, the interim head of the FDA, do you know who Janet Cockburn was? She was the person that approved OxyContin. So we've taken the person who started the biggest epidemic in this country that killed thousands and thousands of people and it ruined lives. And now she's telling us, oh, the vaccine is safe. The Pfizer vaccine is safe, which I think is a questionable approval as far as I'm concerned. I think it's still in the EUA because you can't even get the drug they say it is, the new drug. But how, in God's name, are you relying on these agencies that gave us the heroin epidemic and saying, oh, they're looking out for our best interest? They don't give a shit about us. It's time to wake up and stop relying on what the news is telling you, what these big agencies are telling you, and start thinking for yourself, because it's all about the money. It has nothing to do with health, has nothing to do with safety. It's all about making big money. And do you think 3M is going to come out and tell you the masks don't work? I think you'd be pretty dumb to think any mask company is going to tell you they don't work. But when these are not defined as respiratory protection, and the other day I spoke to a bunch of people, I said, how many people would say this is respiratory protection? They all raised their hands. And some of them work in hospitals. And I said, guess what? The CDC defines these as being with a capital N, a capital O, and a capital T, not respiratory protection. So stop wearing them in the supermarkets and stop walking around like a bunch of zombies and think for yourselves and breathe the fresh air that's God's given you the immune system to deal with. But we're also tied up in believing everything these big agencies say, everything Fauci says. And in reality, we've stopped thinking for ourselves. Not every one of us, obviously, but many of us need to wake up, because this is not going a place we want to go. And we need to finally wake the F up and stand up to this bullshit. Because I'm retired. I don't care anymore. I don't have to, the chief's not going to call me and say, hey, what the hell are you saying on this podcast? I don't care anymore. I'm standing up for my kids. And can you imagine the first graders that went to school for the first day ever, the kindergartners, and they're going to be in their masks on their first day of school? What a horrible thought. I have pictures of my daughter, her first day of school. She's doing arts and crafts. You know, she had a wonderful time. Those are going to be in the album. What about seniors graduating? The yearbook's going to be filled with kids wearing masks. I mean, we only think about COVID as being this huge threat. Everything else is forgotten. And it's just time to wake up and stop. And it's weird how it's along party lines a lot too. People on the left, if you go to Amherst or you go to Northampton, look at Amherst College. They've required double masks now. You pay $82,000 a year to go there to wear a double mask, and 420 kids signed a petition that go there. I would pull my kid out of that school for $82,000 a year. I mean, it is absolutely absurd. And I have a friend that went down the rail trail, the bike trail, and he didn't have a mask on, and people were yelling at him as he rode by them. Mask up, mask up, mask up. I'm like, you're outdoors. I mean, at one point do we say, you know, it reaches a point of absurdity that goes beyond even description, but you're outside and you're getting yelled at because you're not wearing a mask. So, I think we're almost at the point where there's no return. I hope we can come back to some sense of stability. But, you know, between the censorship and everything else going on, it's a scary time out there. And, you know, I'm not afraid to stand up, and I just hope a few more people, you know, stop, you know, turn off the Family Feud and get active, and, you know, stop playing Minecraft or whatever else you're doing. Get active and actually do something that could impact your kids, because no kid's going to go, oh, my dad was, you know, he was always at the bar, or he was out, you know, playing softball all night long. They want to see us stand up. And my daughter's like very proud of me. She's like, Dad, I can't believe you've done this. I wish more people would do that. It's not an easy thing to do, to get up and speak in front of people. But I'll tell you what, it's about time people grew some and did something to put a stop to this. So, I mean, I'm passionate about it, as you can tell, but I just think it's about time. And I have to thank Justin again. You know, honestly, I don't have the words. I mean, I wish there were more people like you. I know there are other attorneys out there that are fighting the good fight. But, you know, accolades to you all day long. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, isn't it bizarre that young people don't rebel against this? Have you ever found that strange?
You know what? It's strange. A lot of the parents and a lot of the older people who have the kids, they grew up in the 60s and 70s, and that's where they question authority. question it all day long. And where are those people now? Now it's just abide by everything they tell you. Yeah, I agree.
Well, parents said that, right? Remember, Louis, after one of the school committee meetings when we're all outside talking, one of the kids who spoke out, who's a junior in high school, Alex Nickel, and I had him on with Louis the last time Louis was on. They were telling Alex, they're like, listen, when we were kids going to school, he's like, we walked out for way smaller issues. He's like, we stood up and made, created chaos for way smaller things. Like it just, I mean, but isn't that almost a example or a kind of telling you that like we are not creating thinkers, but we're creating people who are just going to basically go with the herd?
But Justin's right. I mean, kids, where are they? But Alex, who's a very outspoken kid, and he puts his neck on the chopping block all the time. He has 50, 60 other kids that are calling him all the time. Hey, Alex, can you say this? Can you say that? Because they're afraid to come out. They're afraid that there's going to be retribution against them if they speak out by the school administrators or whatever. So it's just like anybody else. You're not going to hear a doctor come out and say that, ivermectin's a good thing, or, there's very few and far between. They have to they're beholden to the hospitals, who are businesses themselves. So there's people are afraid to speak out because they're afraid they're going to get either censored, or they're going to get canceled, or they're going to lose their job. So the students see the same thing. They're like, hey, my mom, she has to go get the vaccine or she's going to get fired. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to wear my mask and I'm not going to make any waves. So I wish there were more kids out there. If there were, I think it would be a different story. But yeah, that's a good point, Justin.
What Justin said about like just don't follow the rules, like just if there's a mask sign, ignore it. And I want to give people some reassurance they won't get in trouble, because I've talked to a lot of officers, and I want to get your take on this, Louis, because obviously a lot of your friends are still cops. Cops aren't gonna go to these calls and harass you for not wearing a mask, right? Like
they don't want anything to do with it. But the problem is, okay, somebody calls and says, hey, this guy's in my store, he doesn't want to wear a mask. Well, there is no mask mandate right now indoors. Local boards of health can issue them, and DESE can say, okay, kids, you need to wear a mask. But the school resource officer, there's no law, there's no mass general law to be upheld here. This is just a DESE directive. So what's a police officer going to do? That's where the problem comes in, is the principal could say, well, now it's trespassing, or the store owner can say, I don't want him in my store. You don't really need any grounds for trespass, as far as I know. If you don't want them in the store, you want them out of the store, they can use that against you. But I don't, as far as the guidelines themselves or the mandates themselves, I don't see police officers enforcing it. And if they are, they should be ashamed of themselves, because you can see what's going on in Australia right now. Those cops are a disgrace.
So this weekend, like I said, I went to a christening. I'm walking in with my father. There's the big sign, put your mask on. And my father, he doesn't wear a mask. He's 70, whatever, 2, 3. He goes, they could throw me out if they want. That's fine, right? Or if they ask me to leave, I'll leave. I think that's the attitude we need to have, right? You don't need to say, I'll call the cops and I'm not leaving and this and that, but don't wear the mask. If they say, okay, you got to leave, leave, right? But if enough people have that attitude where a third of the customers come in without a mask, well, you're not going to enforce that rule. You're just not going to do it. To give another example, I'm sorry to talk about myself here. My daughter had a dance recital over the summer. It was like 90 something degrees out. They had a sign on the auditorium door, wear your mask in. I'd say 2/3 of the people didn't wear their mask in. And by the end of the show, nobody had a mask on, right? Because they saw either the people who were there to enforce the masks said, well, we can't even do it, or everybody else saw that it wasn't being enforced, so they took their masks off. I think there needs to be some of that. I would think that kids would just be hardwired to behave like that when they're teenagers, but apparently not, which is bizarre to me. I think you're right with your point that they've just been so dumbed down, maybe, that they don't even question it anymore. They just go along with what they're told to do.
Yeah,
well, Patsy, that restaurant Patsy, which isn't too far from you, Justin, they didn't have any mask mandates, and they never wore a mask, and nobody worked there, the owners, and they said the same thing. Like, so the owners, the family knows my wife's family, And first time we went there, we're like, dude, nobody's wearing a mask. And I walked in and I was talking to our waitress, who was the daughter of the owner, and she's like, don't get my dad started about this. She's like, he's like, nobody has to wear a mask in this place. You want to wear one, go ahead, but nobody's telling anybody to wear them. And he just stuck to his guns. And I'm like, how is he not getting in trouble? But he, like you said, he just put his foot down. Same thing with that guy, Ian Smith, in what was it, New Jersey, the gym owner. Same thing. And speaking of best fitness, I would do the same thing. I would wear a mask on the way in, and I would take it off the second I'm in there. And little by little, you see people like kind of look around, and they be like, oh, he's not getting in trouble, let me take it off. And but a good friend of mine, Eddie, who manages it, I don't know if you know Eddie, but he's one of the managers there. He kept getting people complaining at the front desk, and then his boss would yell at him, and then he would have to eventually have to go around and say, hey, do you mind putting it on? Hey, do you mind putting it on? But I was just like, your dad, I'm like, whatever, I'll put it up when they come around. Once they walk away, I'll put it back down. I'm just going to make it annoying for them. And and people would always be like, oh, aren't you going to get kicked out of the gym? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, maybe we'll see, and I'm like, my buddy manages it, so hopefully I don't get kicked out. But so many people, they just needed that first person to have the courage to put the mask down, and then they did it, and then everybody else does it. And it's just like school, right? I mean, the one kid's doing it, you're like, oh, let me, he's getting away with it, let me do it, but somebody does need to step up. And really, it's just the illusion of power and authority. And if you just put your foot down, you realize, like, okay, what's the worst going to happen? Like, I'm going to get kicked out, I'm going to, but at least you're resisting. And thank God there are businesses out there that did stick to their guns. I mean, I went to Patsy's, their food's good, but I was going there. I was telling people about that place and going there just because I love the fact they're sticking to their guns and sticking up for themselves and what they believe in. So people do need to do that. It does seem like it's a little act like, oh, what changed it? But, obviously I named this the Ripple Effect podcast because I truly believe in the ripple effect. We all can create a change. We never know what type of change we're sparking or it could be a part of. So, every little act helps. Even conversations with people, talking to people. I mean, like Louis said, so much of this has become political. I had the inventor of the mRNA technology on my show, who's not a politician. He's a scientist. He's been in the vaccine business forever, worked with all the big vaccine companies. He's outspoken about the dangers of this vaccine, Dr. Robert Malone. And I remember talking to him, and he's like, everybody thinks I'm conservative because the only people who will talk to me are conservative radio. He's like, I'm not a conservative. He's like, I'm not a politician. He's like, I've been, I've been deep into science my whole life. I haven't been studying political ideologies or any of this stuff. And yet, the only people who will talk to him are conservatives. So it's, unfortunately, it has become political where like people think if you're anti-mask or you're anti-vaccine mandates or you're, anti-vaccine little kids, which I think is just crazy. They think immediately they can pigeonhole you. They know everything about you. They know your ideologies. They know what you believe in. You must be a MAGA hat wearing, Confederate flag loving, person. And it's like, no. Like, let's just look at this specific issue. And, many people have said, like, one of the best things that ever happened to ivermectin was the fact that Trump never brought it up because hydroxychloroquine became a complete political thing just because he brought it up. And people, hey, go ahead, Jason. I know you're.
Well, just saying that, it literally was headlines yesterday that Rand Paul was claiming that the reason that ivermectin isn't being used or looked at is because of the left's hatred for Trump, which blew my mind because it was never a drug touted by Trump. And when I saw that, I was just like, that makes absolutely no sense to me. But you are right in the sense that people think that if you, for instance, now I'm hearing that ivermectin's a right-wing thing, right, Ricky? Ivermectin was never a right-wing thing. I was talking about ivermectin in February before it got banned on social media, and I started getting strikes for basically playing Dr. Pierre Corey. Just before this broadcast, I actually put up a video of Dr. Pierre Corey basically owning the opposition that says there aren't any double-blind studies. He cited 5 of them. He cited another single-blind study. He cited a dozen other studies. He says look, we have the data. And actually right now, trending out there is the fact that Joe Rogan has now posted a video that he contracted COVID, tested positive on a Monday, took the devilish ivermectin along with prednisone and I believe the Z-Pack, the astromycin. And on Wednesday, he's feeling great. You know, Monday, he said he was feeling really bad. He had tested, I think Sunday he felt bad. Hollywood Reporter, you can check it out. It's going to be everywhere. But again, when you read that article, it's a horse dewormer. And the way telephone works, again, Ricky, I know we did this broadcast the other day, but I'm sitting in Denny's and discussing these issues with Pat Miletich, and the waitress looks at us and says, you know, I heard they're going to start treating COVID with horse vaccines. And that shows how little some people are just paying attention. And I'm like, no, ma'am, they're not going to treat it with horse vaccines. They were telling you that a drug called ivermectin, which in some studies, in fact, all studies out there that I've seen, actually shows that it does work against this virus. But they're demonizing it because it's also used as a dewormer for horses and sheep. And she looked at me and smiled and she said, no, I saw something different. They're going to use horse vaccines. Just could not get her to understand that was not a thing. So there's a lot of hurdles out there right now. But the Trump thing is crazy to me. I mean, the man hasn't been in office now almost 8 months. I've never worn a MAGA hat. As you know, Ricky, you know, I just did that interview with the New York Times. They want to associate me and my work with Q. I was one of the very first and thorough debunkers of the, you know, message board madness. You know that as well, Ricky, when we were doing those panel shows. So again, I think Justin's right in the sense that some people, they're just not going to have their mind changed. And we've got to group up together with those with open minds that may have some differences, but realize what's going on right now is extremely detrimental, not only to our lives as American citizens, but our children's lives in the future.
I want to add one thing. There's a huge amount of groups out there, different groups, different factions, different associations and organizations. We need to somehow find a way to unite. I was talking to a couple attorneys from the eastern part of the state. They're fighting the good fight just like you are, Justin, but there's got to be some way where we can unite. I mean, you have constitutional law group, you have freedom groups, you have all these people who are basically thinking the same way, but they're having different conversations in different places. I don't know how we do that. I know Facebook won't allow that to happen. Twitter won't allow that to happen, but I think at some point, somehow we have to figure out a way to unite these groups, and people are meeting. They're not setting these things up on social media. They're doing it by word of mouth, and they're having large gatherings in different places. It's out there. People are waking up. It's just a matter of somehow getting us together. And speaking of getting together, I think I'm gonna make a pitch. Justin, maybe you want to come out to Ludlow this weekend for the Ludlow Festa. We have like tens of thousands of people. Hopefully they're all going to be maskless, but it's the Portuguese festival. It's going to be amazing. I guess they have bands and everything, and it's been going on for a long time, but we didn't get to do it last year. So literally, I think what do we get, Ricky? Maybe 15,000 people at a time?
Yeah, it's actually the second biggest Portuguese festival in the U.S. And
yeah.
It's done at the Lady of Fatima Church, which Louis has some history, you know, some family link to the origin story of that. And then, yeah, they're doing an extra day this year, so it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then Monday. And so Saturday and Sunday are the big days. Sunday, they do this whole ceremony outside, the whole church ceremony outside, and they have rides, and they bring in an artist from Portugal to play there, and there's food, but you're basically just celebrating the Portuguese culture and the music, the food, all that type of stuff. I really had my fingers crossed that you know, they were going to go ahead with it, because you know, it would be nice to have some big event that made me forget about 2020 for a little bit. And like Louis said, hopefully, you know, there's not too many masks. If people want to wear masks, great. You know, I think that's the big thing that's lost, is that we're not forcing, or we don't want to force our ideologies or our opinions or our way of life on anybody else. We're just asking people to do the same thing in return. I mean, it's not, you know, that's all we ask. It's like live and let live. It's, you know, if we have, a Buddhist who becomes president, and would everybody be okay with like 6 hours of meditation every day? It's mandated. Everybody has to do it because this is their opinion and their perspective on how the world works. It's like you shouldn't force your opinions and perspectives on other people. And I think one thing we can all agree on is there's so much conflicting opinions in science and research that anybody can cherry pick any outcome they want. So it's like if we're unsure of what exactly is going on, then just look around, forget the science, like Justin said, just look around and observe what's going on. When we go to Best Fitness, you have some people that are just spraying the crap out of everything, but we're all touching the same spray nozzle. So guess what's not being cleaned? The handle that we're all touching and sharing germs. That's a part of just being a healthy human being. Your body has to be exposed to germs and viruses. It constantly is, even if you didn't know it. And just like your muscles, and speaking of working out, like it's a similar thing. I always say this, I'm like, if you don't work out your muscles, they weaken. Your immune system's the same thing. If you completely just remove all viruses and bacteria from your environment, when you do get sick, it's going to hit you hard. So definitely nice pitch to the Portuguese festival. Why not?
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, I grew up in Wilbraham, so
I know one of the noise people.
I know about the Portuguese festival. I've been there more than once, and I'll tell my wife when I get home tonight. My daughters would love it.
Yep.
Awesome.
I think Monday is half price rides. I don't know if they still do that, but you get a ticket for the whole day.
Man, we had a festival here in town. Oh man, it would have been cheaper to go to like Disney for it. It was unbelievable.
Awesome. Well, before, I know that you're charging me per hour and you're attorney, Justin, so this is going to be expensive. I'm kidding, everybody. But does anybody have any final thoughts, questions, ideas, anything they want to share, or anything that's going on? I know you, you were talking about before. If you want to email me that link and anything else you want to put in the show description, we'll throw that in there. But anybody have any final thoughts, or how can people maybe? Well, I don't know if you want that many people emailing you. I was going to say to you, if people want to contact you, what's the best way?
Okay, so a class action challenge to the mandate is in the works. The complaint has been written, it's ready. We're just building up the plaintiffs. So if you want to be part of it, the more plaintiffs we have, the more weight this thing is going to carry in court, right? Go to Family Freedom Endeavor, and there's going to be an intake form, and you sign the intake form, and you're part of it, all right? I really appreciate you having me on the show. I like that sweatshirt. I'm going to buy one after the show. It's been great talking to all you guys. I hope you all keep in touch. I will go to the festival if my wife teaches Irish dance. So
okay.
So she's got her like Irish festivals that we go to every weekend. So if there's
everybody's welcome.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all for the time. You guys have.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Justin. We'll keep in touch. Take care.
Take care.